Section 2.6 Example 5 says you have 3 quarts of paint to paint the trim of your house. A quart of paint covers 100 feet squared. The function A of Q equals 100Q represents the area A of Q in square feet that Q quarts of paint cover. What domain and range are reasonable for the function? What is a graph of the function? The first important question we need to think about is what is the domain? Notice that what we're plugging in is Q, so Q relates to our domain in this problem, and Q stands for quarts. The first thing in the problem tells us we have 3 quarts of paint, so our domain can range anywhere from no paint all the way up to all 3 quarts. So it would be helpful to plug in 0 and 3 and some values in between to get a reasonable range of this function. If we plug in 0, we're using no paint, so it would make sense that we've painted no squared feet. So that gives us the point 0, 0. When we plug in 1, we get 100 times 1, or 100. So if we use 1 quart of paint, we can paint 100 square feet. If we plug in 2, we get 2 times 100, or 200, so we can paint 200 square feet. If we plug in 3, that's our max. So we get 100 times 3, or 300, and if we use all 3 quarts, we get 300 feet squared. So it would make sense to say that a reasonable range for this function would be from 0 feet squared if we didn't use any paint to 300 feet squared if we used all the paint. So again, our domain could be anywhere from 0 to 3, and the range can be anywhere from 0 to 300, both inclusive. Now, if we think about that when we're trying to graph, we're inputting our quarts, so we're choosing how many quarts of paint to use. Now we can use none, we can use 1 quart, 2 quarts, 3 quarts, and that's the most we can use, or we could use anything in between 0 and 3. So it doesn't have to be a full quart. You could use 1.5 quarts, you could use 0.7 quarts. So we can count by ones for the number of quarts since we only have to get up to 3. For the area, we have to get up to 300, so it would make sense to count by something bigger, maybe 50s. So 50, 100, 150, 200, and so on until you get to 300. And because we can use anything in between, we can draw our line. However, notice that the line does not go on forever. It indeed is just a line segment. We have no arrows at the end because we can't have 400 square feet painted if we don't have 4 quarts of paint. So the graph is just this little portion right here. There is a no-need plan chart on the next page to help you get started, along with plenty of information written out. And finally, our graph. On page 140, we have problem 10 for our next U-try. Find a reasonable domain and range for each function, then graph the function. There are 98 international units, IUs, of vitamin D in 1 cup of milk. The function V of C equals 98C represents the amount, V of C, of vitamin D in IUs you get from C cups of milk. You have a 16-cup jug of milk.